Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for having us here. We're going to kind of do this in I'm going to start just kind of a high-level overview of Mercy and where we're going, and then Diane's going to kind of go into the details about our fertility care services, and then I'm going to kind of talk about where we're headed in some of the process pieces with that. But we've just kind of interspersed some quotes that we have from some of our clients that we've collected over time and walking through that. But I want to just talk about, there's no financial issues to worry about here. But I want to talk about who Mercy is first. Some may know who we are and some may not. But to kind of walk through our mission, vision, and values real quick at a high level and how this might play out and trying to understand what's focusing for us. So in terms of our mission itself, we're a Catholic faith-based healthcare ministry based here in St. Louis, Missouri. And our mission is to bring to life the healing ministry of Jesus. And that really is our focus. I hear so often many other comments about that and how we relate in terms of our relationship in the community, and we'll kind of go through some of that. Our values in which we live it out as an organization, just kind of high level there, but one of the things that's driving the conversation about fertility care services comes from our vision statement in particular. In our vision statement, we're really kind of focused on as the health ministry everywhere and every way in which we serve to deliver a transformative health experience. And we really believe from this conversation that we're going that the way in which we approach fertility care services within Mercy is a transformative experience for those couples and families that come to us for care each and every day. And so it's an opportunity for us to kind of really go beyond where we are today and what we're working through. So here's our map of Mercy, where we're at today in all of our locations. I want to just kind of highlight, there's about 41 hospitals in this system and many other places, but the red dots, I just want you to focus on the red dots for this presentation. The red dots are the dioceses in which we reside. So there are 12 different dioceses in which we reside throughout the Mercy Health Ministry, and we'll kind of focus on what that looks like in the practical nuts and bolts. So give a highlight of that. Where we are in Missouri, so just want to look at Missouri. Yeah, I show Illinois, but our ministry in Missouri also extends over into the Illinois communities as well. So we have the 6 dioceses in the region that we work with. To highlight a little bit more specifically, St. Louis in particular and Springfield Cape Girardeau are the 2 focus dioceses that we really want to, we're going to talk more about later. Our ministry in Kansas, Wichita, and then in Oklahoma, both in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. And then again, pulling out into Arkansas. Those are the focus dioceses. So of the 12 that we really work with, where this conversation is going in terms of our fertility care service, we'll focus on those dioceses that are in the state of Missouri, Wichita, Kansas, in Oklahoma, and in Arkansas, and Diocese of Little Rock. So that will be our primary focus. Just kind of give a worldview of the vision. I'm going to ask Diane to come up and talk a little bit about our fertility care program itself, and then I'll be back up to kind of show where we're going and how that all plays out. The bottom one. This one down there.
Thank you, Jared. So I'm going to talk with you now a little bit about how our fertility care service works at Mercy Hospital and how we collaborate with the Archdiocese of St. Louis. So we'll start with Mercy Hospital, St. Louis, Department of Fertility Care Services. So the Department of Fertility Care Services began in 1977 teaching the Creighton Model Fertility Care Service. And the way it came about was as an outgrowth of the work at St. Louis University, right here, which many of you heard the other night. Dr. Hildress, as the director there, had a research team. And after about 10 months working there, he moved on to Omaha, Nebraska. And we had a clientele of about 250 clients and a waiting list of about 70 couples. So my colleague Ann Preble and I approached Sister Mary Rockledge, who was, I would say, instrumental in our formation at Mercy. And we didn't really even have a sophisticated system to show her. But we had some rudimentary forms and a tool that we use called the Picture Dictionary, and we showed that to her, and Sister Rock said this is something that a Catholic hospital should do. So she implemented our work as a Department of Mercy, and we have been a department there ever since. Those of us who worked in that original research team, there were 6 of us all together, 4 continued to work on the research, and we all came really from a pro-life perspective, as a response to the call of Humanae Vitae. As you've heard through this whole conference, Humanae Vitae called for men and women of science and healthcare providers to help people live this church's teaching, which is so important to couples. So we answered that call, actually early under Dr. Hilger's direction. And personally, it really called to me because I was looking for a way to help women in their health care as an alternative to Planned Parenthood. My husband and I had, fortunately, not contracepted in our marriage, used natural systems, and we felt that it was so important to our relationship and family building, and we wanted to share that information with other people. We wanted to help build strong families, and I really had a call to be able to serve our church. So with Dr. Hilger's invitation and those desires began my professional journey. As I've said, we provide the Creighton Model Fertility Care Service. Very briefly, to give you an overview of that, it's a system that tracks external observations of cervical mucus, bleeding patterns, and the structure of the menstrual cycle, which represent the pre-ovulatory and post-ovulatory phase of the cycle. Our clients come to use it for family planning, to avoid or achieve pregnancy. They also come for health care because of abnormalities they're having in their menstrual cycle, to try to find help for that. And then we work in collaboration with our NFP nanotechnology physicians. Many of our clients come with infertility, and we work with them at our level at Mercy in our department without any drugs or devices. Of course, that doesn't mean that once someone is referred to a physician, there be medical or surgical nanotechnology, which is terrific because it goes well beyond what we can do as providers, because none in our department are physicians. We're all registered nurses. But we do collaborate with physicians to provide nanotechnology. You've seen a lot of these charts. Quickly, I'd like to just explain it because I'm not sure you've heard that. It's pretty obvious. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the red stamps, which is obviously for bleeding. You see green stamps, which means it's a dry time where women do not notice mucus. Where you see the white stamps with the little babies, those are for external mucus observation that the woman makes just on routine visits to the bathroom. And then you see something with a P, and that's called the peak day. It's a focal point that's associated with the process of ovulation. And then the rest of those green stamps that you see going out to the end of that first line, those represent dry days, and they represent the post-ovulatory phase of the cycle. If you look at the right side of the screen, which Dr. Young showed this chart the other day, you'll see in the first line, if you just compare these two, you see in the first line there's just 1 day of mucus. And what that translates to is this woman had one time a 1/2 to 3/4 inch of stretch, crystal clear mucus. And that was their best time to get pregnant. This often is represented with infertility. Often a limited mucus cycle like this will represent an underlying medical condition that needs to be looked at. The second line, if you notice the peak day, it only has 5 days before the period, whereas in the left side of the screen you see about a 12 or 13 day period of time. This is too short. It means the progesterone is inadequate, most likely. We don't diagnose as nurses, but we suspect these things. And the person may be at a higher incidence of miscarriage, or PMS. The third line also shows a probable low progesterone with premenstrual spotting. And the fourth line shows abnormal bleeding that may be really a health issue for a given woman. The chart is an absolutely important health record. So we partner with physicians by helping make sure that women are tracking their observations accurately in a standardized way. All of our teachers have standardized education so that each person is getting the same quality. This is really fundamental to the accurate tracking of the system and to the physician's diagnosis and treatment. Our department itself is located about 1.5 miles north of our Mercy St. Louis Hospital. We have 5.5 full-time equivalents. Only 2 people in our department are full-time. Everyone else is working part-time. And we've served about a little over 5,000 women and couples to date. One of the things that is newer in the last 3 or 4 years is our virtual learning and virtual reach out to people in other communities. We work the Mercy WebEx, where we have the chart on a computer with annotations being able to be made, and also one-on-one work with the client, being able to see one another virtually. And that has helped us reach beyond our hospital or our location to many other states. We have a few other things, a Mercy education program that some of you could be interested in, because it's a 13-month training program to train practitioners to actually work with clients. And our next program will be November of 2019. It's held at the Mercy Center on Geyer Road. We also have a seminary program. I know there have been questions about work in the seminary. We have approximately 12 hours of dedicated time to natural procreative technology and fertility care. And this is really great for our seminarians. They can go out into the parishes and feel empowered to have tools for referral to help their parishioners. There is a scientific app being developed, and everybody's always asking for the app. This is scientifically based, which is why it's taken us quite a while to develop it. But I suspect by the end of the year that will be out for our clients. And then we also provide, for the diocese, we provide services, introductory sessions, at least twice a month for our engaged couples, because within our diocese, each engaged couple needs to attend an introductory session with one of the methods of natural family planning or fertility care. Now, who can use the system? You heard this yesterday morning, and I agree with that, truly everyone. These are our clients who come into our program. Married couples, engaged couples, single women, teenagers, religious sisters. I probably have about 25 to 30 religious women or consecrated women who are in our program because of their health needs, obviously not their family planning needs, their health needs, referred by physicians so that they can get appropriate treatment. So anyone can use the system, and we have a huge variety of clientele. Many of our couples come to this program together because this actually is a couple method, as you've heard earlier yesterday. Who funds us? I thought that would be of interest to you. We get a large part of our funding from the Archdiocese, from the annual Catholic Appeal, which is an annual fundraising campaign headed by the Archdiocese. And this supports our operating budget at Mercy, and it also provides revenue for people who cannot afford the care for the fertility care service. Mercy Hospital supports our program. We are not an actual balanced budget. We actually have support for the rent of our office, for example, and other operating expenses. We do collect client fees, and our last look, we had an 86% of the claims that were viewed had some insurance reimbursement. We have private donors, and we have fees from our special programs, such as our mother-daughter programs, our father-son programs, which we have developed to help the community, to help parents talk with their children about sexuality, modesty, chastity, and growing up. We also have a panel of teens in that program, which is very popular. To move to our St. Louis Archdiocesan Office of Natural Family Planning in St. Louis here, our relationship with Mercy began in 1998, and it was initiated by Cardinal Regali, who was then our Archbishop before he was Cardinal. And he set a department, actually, of natural family planning within the Office on Laity and Family Life. In 2005, Cardinal Burke was our Archbishop, and he decided to transition that department to a freestanding office within the Curia. In that office, I'm director and report to the Chancellor, and I meet routinely with the Chancellor's ministry team. The office location is shared with Mercy Department. It's on Stute Avenue, close to our hospital. The mission, as stated by Cardinal Regali when he started the program, is this, and I quote, "The mission of the Office of NFP is to give more prominence to our NFP initiatives, to recognize the expansion of our archdiocesan efforts and to coordinate NFP services offered at various locations, end of quote. This collaborative approach with the Archdiocese and Mercy NFP services goes across the St. Louis Archdiocese, and it's beneficial for both of those entities. For the hospital credibility in the community is beneficial for the church to link with medical care for women. It's beneficial for Mercy to assist the church in reaching the community and offering this needed service, which is in harmony with the Catholic Church teaching. In that office, I oversee close to 40 providers of 5 different models, many fertility care services, 4 other models of natural family planning at over 20 locations. We also have funding for that office. Again, so grateful to the annual Catholic Appeal that funds us annually. And the way the funding works is the annual appeal writes a grant to Mercy Hospital. Everyone involved in that office is actually an employee of Mercy, and Mercy is compensated by a designated grant from the Archdiocese. And that revenue is used in the operating budget to cover costs of the Archdiocesan Department. And I will say that Mercy subsidizes that cost also. So the funding is actually shared by both entities. We have a lot of jobs in that NFP office. We review requests for funding. This is ACA funding that NFP providers request. So my job is to gather statistics from 13 entities, evaluate them, and distribute grants. For next year, it's $200,000, which will go to 13 different entities. We also have implemented an archdiocesan-wide marketing plan for all the NFP providers, and we have branded materials for that. And we have many programs that serve the Archdiocese. And of course, when we develop programs to serve the Archdiocese, we are also developing support programs for Mercy Hospital. And one of the really key things here is that no longer is Mercy Hospital responsible for the financial expense of all of those programs. When the Archdiocese developed these departments and offices, the expense became shared, and that's been a very big advantage. So some of our programs, I'll go through very quickly. We do have information at our exhibit on these programs if you would like more information. I only have the time to touch on them right now. But we have a program called Enkindle, and it assists with the emotional aspects of infertility and the spiritual aspects of infertility. We've had prayer services, masses, and individual counseling with a counselor, and also support groups, because our couples with infertility often feel alienated from the church. They feel that the church is focusing on families, and they are in a very high pain level with their infertility. We assist people with adoption, because we've learned that there was no one in our archdiocese really giving money to people who are trying to adopt children. And that expense can be upwards of $25,000, $40,000, in some cases $50,000. So people were taking loans on their home, taking loans from their parents, and we can't help them as much as we'd like to, but we do fundraising, and we have been able to contribute 29 grants with a total of over about $150,000. Now, the reason you see the Cardinal Baseball Suite there, it's another collaborative approach with Mercy. They are generous enough to donate part of the Cardinal Baseball Suite seats, and you know we're big Cardinal fans in St. Louis. I don't know, maybe there's somebody from Chicago here, I apologize, but we are Cardinal fans. So these raffle tickets are very popular, and we do raise money for this grant through that and many other areas, including the annual Catholic Appeal. We have natural family planning parish ambassadors who promote and evangelize NFP. They help their pastors be resources for them to help evangelize within their parishes. And the pastors are learning more about NAPRO technology for their parishioners, so they know there's an effective way for their parishioners to have good health care in the reproductive area, and it's in keeping with our beliefs. We have special events. Annually, we have a Humanae Vitae celebration mass with the Archbishop or one of the other bishops. The prayer or mass services for infertility. On St. Joseph's feast day, we have an adoption family blessing with the bishop or archbishop for the people who've received the grants, and that's very meaningful to these people. Some of our future projects, we also had a year-long evangelization project on Humanae Vitae, where we collaborated with other offices of the Curia. And this has been fantastic. We've been able to provide resources to the community with these other Curia offices to help educate and evangelize about Humanae Vitae. Some of our future projects that I think are very important, we have a Wonder of Eve program that we are piloting within the Archdiocese. This is for high school girls, and it's to help them understand how beautifully they're made and that they don't need to change their reproductive system with contraception and hormonal support. If things are going wrong in their procreative cycle, there are other approaches besides getting on the pill. We touch on NFP, but primarily we're coming from a healthcare perspective because we've learned that this is what our young people are more interested in hearing from us. So it's a gateway to be able to talk to them about natural. We started a Diane program just starting in November, where we're meeting with 18 students from previous class to help understand this. We also are developing a video for priests. The diaconate program, we're having a video series for priests to assist them in talking to young engaged couples so they can understand NFP a little bit better. Our priests have told us that they need help in this way. So we are actually developing a video series for that. So these activities provide a service to the St. Louis community. And by helping the St. Louis community, we are also supporting and reaching out to our Mercy clients, and also, in a way, outreaching and marketing to them as well as to our other NFP programs. So just in conclusion, I want to say that I think blending the Department of Fertility Care Services and the Archdiocesan Office of Natural Family Planning is beneficial to both entities, particularly in these three ways. We provide reproductive health care consistent with Catholic teaching to women. We provide natural family planning to couples, and we provide fertility care services to women and couples. I have heard a lot of interest in doing this, and I guess my invitation to you would be to please administrators of hospitals and doctors of influence and people within the Church of Influence and bishops talk to one another, because as partners you can accomplish so much more, I think, than you can accomplish alone. And our collaboration has really been absolutely fantastic, and I feel that all these programs and growth are directly related to this collaborative opportunity. So I just urge you to take that first step. Again, if we can be helpful, we do have cards at the exhibit and information about these different programs. So thanks. Back to Jared.
Thanks, Diane. So you can see that the relationship we have with the Archdiocese of St. Louis is pretty much intermingled in many different ways, at multiple levels of from the office all the way through. So some of the things that has happened as Mercy, as a health ministry, we've really started to think through, what does this look like? Because we've heard these similar needs in other places in which we serve. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about how Mercy has begun to think about this and what has really moved our thinking down further. So in 2008, the Sisters of Mercy, the religious community, had transferred the sponsorship officially of Mercy Health Ministry to a separate, and to use some jargon, sorry about that, a separate public juridic person that reports straight to Rome. So this body is made up of lay folks and sisters are the religious sponsors of our Mercy Health Ministry, reporting to Rome. And we do that as a system of care across our whole footprint within Mercy in the communities in which we serve. Recognizing, though, the diocesan structures in which they work, they sometimes don't recognize that there are other bishops in the world or other places in the world. So each diocese has their own local nuance and the way in which they like to handle things and kind of walk through that. And we've had to really make our approach somewhat nuanced in each diocese as we walk through that. Yet as a public juridic person, we really, and as a system of care, have really moved to focus on a common approach. So in about, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, I had moved into a role in which really church relations becomes the formal role in which I look at and asked to devise a strategic plan for church relations across Mercy. What is it going to look like? Because in all the dioceses in which we're in, the nuances are so different, and as the systems come together in as one system of healthcare, you make one change in one diocese, and whether you like it or not, electronic medical records has that type of effect. You make one change, it moves the whole system, of which some other one bishop might not like, right? So we're trying to help navigate that. So we wanted to make sure we had an intentional and collaborative approach between us and the other parts of the ministry, but also between us and the various parts of the church. The bishop's office in particular was a part of our collaborative conversation, the chancellors, and Catholic Charities. We also wanted to make sure it was coordinated. So often in all of the hospital locations, we have other mission leaders. There's 20 plus mission leaders throughout Mercy who all do their own thing, and then I would find out about it because something went wrong, right? And so then I was on crisis management mode, which is not really where I want to be. So we wanted to make sure we have a coordinated approach across the whole system, and that it's also geared toward ministry growth. So often we like to do a lot of good things, but those good things are thrown over the fence and they hope they stick, and then we don't return back to it. And so we come back, we started this program, but then it finished because no one paid attention to it. So we really want to work toward what's it going to be looking like, long, sustaining, and toward growth of the ministry itself. But we also need to be able to respond within communities. So each community has its own needs and desires that are going on. Each bishop has their own concerns and hopes. So what does it look like to have community alignment and coordinated across the system was the challenge that was set before me by the governance committee of our sponsoring body. So those 4 dot points, not easy in itself, but trying to navigate that across all of the uniqueness of our health system was always a fun. So there was a process put in place. This process took right at a year, and in this process we interviewed. Literally, there was a standard interview questions that was created using appreciative inquiry methodology, as well as some other methodologies employed, but mainly appreciative inquiry, in which we interviewed the clinic presidents, so all of these physicians across our ministry, and the hospital presidents across our ministry, community clergy, all the way down to the deanery and parish level. So where we had active engagement, or maybe not even any engagement, with the local Catholic parishes or other than Catholic congregations, we interviewed those folks. As a part of the interview process, also the deans that are associated with the geographic regions of our hospitals were primary contact, and then foundation leaders. So within Mercy, health foundations, but also community foundations. So if there's another community foundation, what was their feedback? The chancellors and vicar generals were instrumental in providing key insight into what they were wrestling with in each of the areas, as well as the bishops and the presidents of Catholic Charities. So all of this data throughout our whole system, in all 12 dioceses in which we serve, was pulled together, and all the mission leaders then came together in that diocese. So in healthcare, we work by regions, but those regions overlap in diocesan structures. And so people who didn't normally work together on projects were now being put together on projects because now they're no longer just responsible for a hospital region, but now they're responsible for a diocesan, or vice versa, however that may play out. But they came together to create a plan based on the input and feedback from those interviews. And then the 4 outcomes that came from those meetings really was, how do we do this and like to be proactive and positive? So remember when I was in crisis management mode, not really where I wanted to spend most of my days, but really to be more proactive and positive in our relationships with the local church, but also to help define the parameters. Now, this may not be a shock to many, but when you think about how we usually got engaged in healthcare and church ministries, the ministry of the church and healthcare and other agencies of the church, you'd get these requests for golf tournaments, to come sponsor a golf tournament that may or may not be related to improving the health outcomes of the community, may or may not be related to what we need to work on as a ministry. So trying to help better align that doesn't really create a lot of friends. But we wanted to be able to still have a better positive relationship. So there was a level of mutual sharing and distinction that came out of the conversation between the health ministry and each diocese. And then within the diocese, there may be different hospitals and different mission leaders. They now have a shared vision and goals, as well as plan for how we're going to interact in the diocese and what we're going to work together on, and that conversation. And then we continue to identify the strengths, the opportunities, the aspirations, and then now we're starting to move into where we track the results, which has been a new process for us. Because in ministry, we don't always track those results, but it gives us an opportunity then to start moving that direction. Talked about being coordinated in our approach. So in 12 different dioceses in which we serve, and I talked about the highlighting part of the 4 dioceses that we're really going to kind of highlight and focus on here soon, to really have that consistent approach across that, which really helps us bridge the gap in terms of what we're looking at in terms of fertility care services that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But when we talk about community alignment and what the work of advocacy and diocesan needs and trying to meet those needs, one of the needs that came out in almost every diocesan context was the ability to connect in with fertility care services in particular. How we might be able to extend services, bring providers to certain communities, whatever that might look like. And so that raised some conversation. The other thing is being geared toward ministry growth. We want to grow in a way in which that represents who our identity as a Catholic healthcare ministry. So we're not just going to be growing for growth's sake, but really, how do we connect with faith communities and with the initiatives that they're doing? So often, parishes saw the hospital as a burden they had to deal with, right? But we want to really find a way in which we can have that mutual relationship and the opportunity for us to work together on various things. So the relationships with our common heritage that come out of the conversation. And then community alignment. Each diocese now has a plan, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those plans. But let me just talk about where we're at today in terms of Mercy Virtual. So Mercy Virtual is a large hospital without patients in a bed in the hospital. It basically resides out in Clayton and Clarkson area here in Chesterfield, and it is all the specialists in the world that you could ever want. And that Mercy Virtual technology has now went through our whole system and has really increased the availability of specialists for stroke, for heart attacks, for you name it. We've really kind of moving out in that conversation in terms of that, so that patients can stay in their home and find the opportunities to do that. Well, with this technology that we have with Mercy Virtual, it's really kind of helped us look at our current state of fertility care service, where we're very geographically bound here in the Archdiocese of St. Louis and interwoven so deeply in the Archdiocese, to think about, based on the responses that we've gotten from the other dioceses, how can we help and assist them in meeting what their needs are as well? We can't always hire, there's no more Diane Dalys to be able to stretch Diane more. And she only has so many hours in a day. However, she doesn't need to spend it all the time in the car either. So that's where Mercy Virtual comes in as a conversation. Our current state and all the practitioners, what that looks like, what are the services we could offer virtually, is where we're in the process at this point in time. How do we partner with dioceses? So we have 2 different pilots going on right now that we're starting out. One is a virtual pilot in one diocese to kind of, we've played with it a little bit to work through the virtual technology. It's more secured that way. The other is, how do we partner them with a diocese to have a virtual supplement for a person on the ground that has access to the resources then. And right now, like I said, we're geographically located with sites here in St. Louis, and we offer CME and GME here, and also the internal referrals. Where we're going is really looking at all the dioceses that are in the footprint and places in which Mercy serves, and working through their requests out of how do we help expand fertility care services and NFP opportunities as a part of their diocesan offices. Not to take on the leadership of their, like we do here in St. Louis, where we're both a partnership between the Office of Family Planning and Mercy Fertility Care Services, but are there certain services we can provide either virtually or help supplement someone on the ground to really kind of do that process? In every diocese, they're struggling with trying to find folks to help do either the education sometimes in the marriage prep classes or the ongoing education as a part of the whole process. So that's where we're going. We're right now in the grounds phases of launching what we call V Fertility Care, which is our way of moving Mercy virtual and moving fertility care services out as an actual service that right there on your iPad you would have access to those. You can set the appointment, have the access to it, to talk to someone through it, maybe pull up the charts and kind of walk through the whole process as a whole thing. We're still trying to work out the bugs in that, but that's where we're headed in that conversation. So, recognizing that I had just a couple minutes left, and I would kind of pause on that and where we're at, questions, comments, concerns, and I ran through those slides really quick to keep us back on time. So, yes, sir. Yeah, so as our system right now, we have a primary preference for the Creighton model at this point in time, but we do have the practitioners we're in conversation with do have other methods in which they're going to offer, and that's where we're trying to negotiate how that plays out between the health system and between the diocese. And that's, but our current collaboration right now with the Archdiocese has 5 other methods, correct? 4 other methods, or 5 other methods in the Archdiocese. 5, okay. So we're still trying to work that out in the other dioceses. Yeah, and Father Tyler, who leads the Healthcare Commission for the Diocese of Little Rock as well, is here, so it's good to see him here for that. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. All right.
Could you just mention that I think in all the areas, the mission leaders are in the office, you know, the next person mission is ready.
Oh, yeah. So Diane just wanted me to make sure I mentioned that in each of those 20 mission VPs or mission leaders that we talked about that did all the survey, they're intimately involved in making sure also the referral patterns and the connection with the Office of Fertility Care Services is instrumental in trying to connect those referrals up. So that's it. All right. Thank you.